state of Missouri, they want something different.
We're back with the Democratic nominee for Missouri Governor, Crystal Quade. She jumped into the race in July of last year. Growing up in Springfield, she's the first person from her family to graduate from high school. After earning a degree at Missouri State, she spent some time staffing for Senator Claire McCaskill and was first elected to the Missouri House in 2016. She's now termed out and can't run again. Quade has had an uphill battle in Jeff City as House Minority Leader, working to take on Republicans in an effort to restore abortion rights and improve gun control, among a number of other issues. Quade has long said that her time at the state capitol has prepared her for the governor's office. That's where we begin today. You have years of leadership experience in the legislative branch in Jeff City. So does your opponent. What sets you apart in that regard?
You know, one of the real strengths that I've had to develop as the Democratic leader in the State House is figuring out how to get things done without always getting the credit. A big piece of that is working across the aisle in an often very divisive environment. And as folks know, you know, it's not even Democrats versus Republicans anymore. We now see the Conservative caucus, the Republican caucus, the Democratic caucus. And it's just been very interesting over the last few years, that further division. And so a big piece of my role as the leader has been, where can we work across the aisle to get things done, find places to compromise and be productive. And for me, it's about being the adult in the room and bringing us back to the things that matter to Missourians.
In that vein, what's the number one issue you think facing Missouri right now?
You know, I think that functioning government is definitely the biggest thing that as governor I will put forward in terms of focusing on. You know, there's a lot from crime to Missourians struggling to make ends meet. We need to look at jobs. We need to look at the education structure. But there's so much happening in Jefferson City where the state government is failing, and that's things like paying our bills on time for child care providers, making sure that Missourians don't have to wait on hold for 5 or 6 hours when they're trying to get services from state government. And that's a thing that I can do outside of party lines. That's a thing that we can get done on day one as governor.
Would you support tax cuts in any way as governor? You know,
I definitely want to have a conversation around taxes in a more fair way. And I say that we have seen tax cuts in Jefferson City over the last 8 years that I've been there. You know, folks have touted the largest tax cuts in Missouri's history, but those have been for the corporations and the wealthiest in our state. And I know Missourians are still currently struggling within the tax system that we have right now. I want to look at tax alleviation around things like grocery taxes, or having conversations around tax credits for early child care or elder care, where we know so many Missourians are struggling having to take care of their aging parents, and that is not a space that Missouri has put much focus on. And so when it comes to tax cuts in the state of Missouri, I really want to have a conversation around what's fair.
Your opponent supports an income tax cut in Missouri. What say you?
You know, again, I think that this is a conversation that I'm definitely open to, and I want to see what proposals the legislature puts forward. But when I hear conversations around these tax cuts, I look back of what we've seen in Jefferson City over the last several years with the administration that he's been a part of. Again, we are seeing tax cuts for the wealthiest and not the regular working class folks.
Let's talk about reproductive rights. This is a huge part of this campaign and in Missouri in general, because we have an amendment that would reverse the state's abortion ban on the ballot in November. Court battles are over for now, but opponents have said to expect some if this passes in November. What would you do as governor to protect the will of the people if this does pass?
I would say this is probably the biggest difference between Lieutenant Governor Kehoe and myself is his not support for Amendment 3. You know, he's actively said that he would tank his own campaign for governor to make sure that this amendment fails. While I have been a huge supporter of getting politicians out of our doctors' offices. And as governor, you know, as you mentioned, we're already hearing from folks on the other side of this issue that they're going to do everything they can to undermine the will of voters, just like they did with Medicaid, just like they've done with all of these initiatives that citizens put forward. And so as governor, I will veto anything that comes across my desk that encroaches on what the voters decide this November when it comes to reproductive health care. And not only that, we're going to do everything we can to support our doctors to increase the amount of medical professionals we're seeing in our state. We don't have enough OBs who are able to work in this field right now. Folks are fleeing the state of Missouri, and that's a fact. And so as governor, I will do everything I can to support our healthcare professionals.
You say protect the will of the people. Conversely, if Amendment 3 fails, what do you do?
I am a staunch believer in reproductive rights and healthcare, and citizens know that. I have always been in that vein, and so it will be working with the legislative body to see what we can do to support folks right now in the state. As you mentioned, we have the most drastic ban in the country without exceptions for rape and incest. I want to have conversations around, if the voters turn this down, can we add those exceptions in within the legislative body? What can we do to support our doctors so that they are able to intervene and save the life of women?
Does having Amendment 3 on the ballot, you think, help you and other Democrats in November? How does that play out in your eyes, do you think?
I think it does, absolutely. The Democratic Party has been very vocal in this conversation, but it's not specifically to the Democrats, of course. But having been one of the lawmakers in Jefferson City in 2019 when this bill passed, and that set us on this track to where we are today, I shared my own personal story of abuse and what this bill would do to someone like me if it had been passed when I was a kid. We had colleagues of mine talk about their miscarriages on the floor and how dangerous this would be for women like them. And so absolutely, we know that it's going to help with election turnout. We know folks are excited about this, and that crosses party lines. We know that more folks are going to show up to the polls. My job as the gubernatorial candidate is making sure that they understand that I'm the governor who will support them in that decision.
We know you've been crisscrossing the state on the campaign trail. Rural and suburban voters, of course, are essential to win the governor's race. How are you connecting with those voters in different walks of life?
Yeah, I grew up in rural Southwest Missouri on a gravel road in the middle of nowhere, and so I definitely understand the importance of showing up in those spaces and having conversations with people. I won my first election in 2016 with my yard signs right next to Donald Trump yard signs in the same yard as a pro-choice Democrat. And we did that because when you talk to folks about the issues that matter most to them, they cross party lines. We have the lowest paid teachers in the entire country and lowest funded education system. We have lost 18 rural hospitals in the last decade, and that's a huge thing. People right now in the state of Missouri have to drive over an hour to get to some emergency rooms, and this is a life and death conversation. And so when I show up as a gubernatorial candidate, we talk about those issues that matter most and how I can help them.